Did you notice that the UFC is having an event on June 25th in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and it's BJ versus Dennis Seaver?
No. BJ Penn versus Dennis Seaver.
BJ Penn versus Dennis Seaver.
Is that the main event?
Yeah, I believe so.
They got to stop, man. They got to stop with that. When a guy's not having a level, when you're having the problems BJ's having, you throw him in a match, not a 5-rounder. You just can't. You got to stop. I don't know why those fights ever went to 5 rounds. I have no idea whose idea that was. I have no idea the savings on booking less fights or why you think you need that kind of TV time. Not very many 5-round fights make it 5 rounds. Almost no 5-round fights are fun to watch. I have no idea why they did the 5-round rule. And now you're going to take a guy that hasn't won a fight in a meaningful period of time, who's up there in age, and you're going to stick him in a 5-round atmosphere.
Well, I don't know if it's a 5-round. I know he's on that card.
And well, if he's main event, he's 5 rounds.
Okay. But to go back a little bit, I thought after his last fight, I thought he should retire. And you said, you know what? There's a place for BJ in fighting. It's just not fighting the killers at the top. Well, I don't think, Dennis Seaver is a great fighter. He's been fighting forever in the UFC. But this is a good matchup. To your point that he does have a place in the sport.
Yeah, I think that same thing. And in this sport, it is about contenders, right? If you're not the champion on top of the bill, you need guys on the roster who are striving to be. That is the rule. There are some times where you get an exception where you have a guy like BJ Penn with a meaningful skill set, a big fan base, and a presence where he can go in, participate in a sport he loves, stay involved, continue his career, but the matchups do need to be a little bit more favorable. I don't know how else to word it. Dennis Seaver can beat BJ Penn, but BJ Penn could beat Dennis Seaver too. So it's a good match. It's a good match. I don't have an opinion on who's going to win that fight just yet. You caught me off guard with that, but it's a good, fair matchup. I have thought that people need to consider that, though. So many people were calling, you called for BJ's retirement, and so did some other people, but he might have fought the guy in Yair, that's the best in the world. He might be that good. We don't know. He's so new. He's never been stopped. He's never been beaten yet. He might be the guy. And so, when you put BJ, it's like, hey, do I really have to retire when I just lost to the world's best? They did that same thing to Ronda, calling for her retirement. It's like, look, Ronda's not going to be champion. She never belonged in that spot. But are you saying there's not a spot for her? That's insane. If people still want to see her compete, and she's still able to do it, and she's still got the eye of the tiger, yeah, is she going to need some more favorable matchups to stay in? Sure. I'm not saying give her matches she can win, but now that you see where her skills are and you see what reality is, there's still a place for her. And I've never understood how you go from top of the bill to out of the sport. BJ's last fight, regardless of the outcome, he was the main event. When you're working your way up the sport, your first thing is you're trying to get a contract. Then so now you're in there somewhere, but now you want to be on the main card. Okay, so you're going to have to start in some prelims, work your way up, and get to the main card. You then want to work your way into a co-main, to a main, to a title. That's the process. But as a guy backs out of the sport, he has the right to follow that same process. He has the right to go from main event, to co-main, to main card, to undercard, to out of the sport. And when I have seen some guys have such incredible pressure put on them, and have to go from main to out of the sport, I thought, well, I don't know if that was completely right. That's not really the process of this. There is a progression and there's a regression, but that architecture is in place. It's been laid out for years. Let a guy go through the process. He can still be involved.
My takeaway from that is just doing research on the people we have on the shows, including yourself, including who you fought the last 10 years. You're still at the top of the bill. You're still fighting a killer. Randy Couture, you can each and every one of them, killer after killer after killer. No, it's never been done before where you are at the very top that you're now fighting a guy that's 5-2. The regression that you talk about is something that might work, but it's never been done before. I've never saw it in any way, shape, or form, whether it was in MMA or boxing.
Yeah, I just want to see guys go out and compete. That's what I personally want to see, because when they don't do that, I know what's really going on. And you'll see some guys go out there and get clobbered. And, if you were to talk about my career since 2009, I have not fought anybody that wasn't a world champion. I fought 2 guys that weren't world champions. However, they were number one contenders at the time that I fought them, and I got those fights because nobody else would do it. It's hard to win those fights. It is very hard to just keep on beating world champions and number one contenders. It's tough. But if those are the cards you're dealt and that's what you're going to play, great. What I don't like is when a guy comes out that's been getting cleaned up by the top guys and then keeps on demanding top guys. Because what he's saying is, yeah, I realize I'm going to lose, but it sure is a lot easier to say I lost to and then fill in the blank. I lost to a world champion, or I lost to a Frankie Edgar, or I lost to these top guys. I like a guy like BJ Penn. You decide who the opponent is, and I'll go take him on. I like guys like that. I admire it. I don't love the guys that are demanding the highest guys, and I want to fight all of the best. Hey, man, why don't you fight somebody you can compete with? If you're going to call somebody out, fight somebody you can compete with, because you falling down and getting carried out night after night just isn't fooling anybody.
I think that's what Vitor told himself when he said, hey, I'll fight CM Punk.
It could have been. There was a little bit of that. That's kind of what BJ, or rather Michael Bisping, had to say about it. He said, hey, you call out a guy who's only done this one time. You're a former world champion. The one time the guy did do it, it was at 170 pounds. Now you want the guy to move up to your weight of 185. Yeah, it was a little bit bizarre that he did that he, essentially had demoted himself down to calling out a guy from a different weight class with an experience level that was insurmountable. It was a little bit bizarre. We
talked about Matt Hughes last week, and Hoyce had come out and said, yeah, I'd fight him again. Bellator keeps their cards to themselves. Do you think that's a match they make?
Yeah, maybe. I think so. I mean, it would come down to a numbers game. They can't overpay for that, and Matt Hughes was greatly overpaid by the UFC. Matt Hughes doesn't know that about himself. He thinks he was drawn and selling. He wasn't doing any of those things. He was an excellent fighter. He was the best fighter in the world at the time, deserved to be world champion. He fought anybody at any time, and he did some heavy lifting, and he was rewarded, greatly compensated beyond the numbers he brought in because of that. If he is lost in those numbers, and he thinks that he can come off the shelf and get a fight with anybody for those, no, they're not going to get off the starting point. But if he comes in and goes, hey, I am sincere that I want to compete, and then Bellator can come back and go, okay, well, here's what our analysts say your value is, let's do something. I think they will get somewhere. And I know I would like to see that fight. I'm not going to clamor for that fight, and that's the world's greatest. I got a great feeling when Kavanaugh suggested Gunnar Nelson versus Wonderboy Stephen Thompson. I go, whoa, that's good. When you told me Derek Lewis was going to fight Mark Hunt, I go, whoa, I want to see that. That's very interesting and intriguing for me. I don't have the same feeling there, but I do want to see it. I will tune in and watch Hoyce versus Matt Hughes. I like a comeback fight. I always like a Hoyce Gracie fight. Now you got a former world champion in Matt Hughes, a Hall of Fame that we never thought we'd see. There's something cool there. That's where it ends. That's not something I'm clamoring to do. And there's a number that fight is worth. If Matt Hughes understands that process and can come in and do that, great. If he is lost in, hey, I'm the biggest star because the UFC appreciated me to the point that they said I was, no, the numbers are the numbers. Here's what you brought in, here's what we believe you can bring in today, and here's what we're willing to pay for it. If they want to do that, yeah. But I don't want to see anybody lose. I don't want to see Bellator or anybody lose. You got to control those purse strings. The UFC's taking so much heat for that to the point that now they're in a class action lawsuit, when the reality is controlling the purse strings moves the business and moves the industry and the company forward. It's the single most important thing.
Why do you think Reese packed up in the middle of the night, moved 2,600 miles to Maryland, but he won't drive 150 miles to come see us?
To Chicago?
No, to New York.
Because Miss Katie is in Maryland. That's why he went. That's an incentive, and apparently you and I just aren't one. I mean, I would say the answer is, I'd say the answer is pretty clear. We may not like the answer.
He moved away from us. He's definitely not going to drive an hour and a half.
He wanted to see Miss Katie. He left Joel and Chael. Why would he drive 300 miles round trip to come see the guys he just bailed on?
I haven't gotten along with him any better since he left.
Really?
No, I've gotten along with him great since he left. That's what I wanted to say. Like, our relationship is great now that he's gone.
Yeah, well, they say that the distance is the most important thing for a relationship. Distance makes the heart grow fonder.
Reese boy, you didn't come see us.
Hey, so what do you got? I do want to circle back to this.